All right, good afternoon. We'll now call to order the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting for November 21st, 2016. The first item on our agenda is a consideration of the minutes from our regular meeting on October 26th, 2016. Those minutes were provided in our agenda packets. Are there any changes needed for those? Hearing none, we'll consider those approved and move on to new business. Our first is a variance request, application Z16066 by Mark Gilday of L&L Contractors, representing Linda Stevens, who is requesting a 2% variance from Chart 2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which allows a maximum lot coverage ratio of 30% in the single-family residential district. This is for property located at 312 North Manny Avenue. Mr. Anthony, if you would review that for us.
Yes, sir. The applicant wishes to construct a new 416 square foot garage behind an existing single-family house located at 312 North Manny Avenue. The property is zoned RS8, and the total area of the subject property is 10,503 square feet. Chart 2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance limits lot coverage in the RS8 district to 30%. The property presently includes three structures, a 1,940 square foot house, a 950 square foot accessory structure, which was formerly a commercial business, and a 324 square foot garage. The existing total lot coverage is 3,214 square feet, or 30.6%, so it already goes over slightly the 30% allowable. The applicant intends to remove the existing garage and replace it with a 416 square foot garage. The proposed garage's dimensions would be 16 feet in width and 26 feet in depth. With the addition of the new garage, the total lot coverage would be 3,306 square feet, or 31.5%. So the applicant is seeking a variance from that 30% lot coverage maximum to allow a 2% overage. In the attached request letter, the applicant contends that the irregular shape of the property constitutes practical difficulty and an unusual characteristic. The applicant also contends that the practical difficulties are not self-created. The proposed garage would be constructed in such a way that it would maintain the historic character of the house, according to the applicant. And further, the garage would improve the appearance of the property and increase the amount of space between structures on the applicant's property and the neighboring property to the north. There are a couple of things I want to point out. First of all, in the staff report, we mention that Historic Zoning Commission approval is necessary. In talking with Mr. Lewis, the staff person for historic zoning, it appears that that may not be the case. This may lie just right outside of the historic zoning boundary. Secondly, I want to point out that the existing garage on the site is located closer to the rear and side property lines than 5 feet. The zoning ordinance allows accessory structures to be located, to have a minimum setback of 5 feet off of rear and side property lines, and the existing garage is within 5 feet. The new garage would be outside of that, so that would be one encroachment that would be resolved by the construction of this new garage. Mr. Gilday is here, and I'm here as well to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Anthony?
Do you know the dimensions of the current garage?
Let me see. Let me see if they show it. The dimensions of the existing one. Mr. Gilday, do you happen to know the rough dimensions of the existing?
It's 12 by 27.
Okay.
Okay. I was just curious.
It says an old store. I see, I guess, on the plan, an old store.
That's right. There is an old store. Let me see if we can get a picture of that. I didn't do a good job of capturing it. If you look in this photo on the far right, you can sort of see the edge of the wall of that store. And then if you look at this aerial photo, the main house is there on the north, the garage is back behind it, and the old store is pulled right up to the street right here. The posts actually come out over the sidewalk, if I remember correctly. That structure, I believe right now, I'm not sure what the use, is it being used at all or just for storage?
It's her workshop. She just rebuilds furniture and some other things in there.
Okay. Any further questions for staff at this point? Mr. Gilday, anything you'd like to add? Anything in addition? We hit you with a couple of questions there.
No, I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would come forward and state your name and address and any comments you might have.
I'm Steve Boffman. I live at 315 North Manny, directly across the street from this property being discussed. I'm totally in for this. I had owned that property at one time, had sold it to an artist, Leslie Roberts, that did mosaic arts, and Linda Stevens purchased it from her, who's also another artist, a fiber artist, who has her loom in there. Although this isn't being discussed particular, but she's done a lot of improvements over what I originally did with that property. I'm all for her allowing to do this. It doesn't encroach on my property. It's visually going to be a lot better than the other storage unit. Basically what it is, she can park her car inside. So I'm totally for this as a neighbor directly across the street. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay. If not, we'll close the public hearing and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If there's no further discussion, I move to approve the application. I don't think there's any staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That application has been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16067 by Matt Taylor of SEC, representing ASG Partners Limited Partnership. They're making the following request for property located in the heavy industrial district located at 215 West Castle. This application has four components. Number one is an 8-foot variance from Chart 2 of the zoning ordinance, which requires a 42-foot front yard setback in the heavy industrial district for frontage along West Castle Street. Part 2 is a 27-foot variance from the zoning ordinance, which requires a 42-foot front yard setback in the heavy industrial district for frontage along Hickerson Drive. Part 3 is a 22-foot variance from the zoning ordinance, which requires a 42-foot front yard setback for frontage along Hilliard Drive. And fourth, a 37-foot variance from Section 25E5 of the zoning ordinance, which requires that an accessory structure in a commercial district comply with the minimum 42-foot front yard setback in the heavy industrial district for frontage along Hilliard Drive. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, sir. The applicant wishes to construct a new 26,950 square foot commercial structure at 215 West Castle Street. The property is owned HI and has street frontage along three sides: West Castle on the north, Hickerson on the east, and Hilliard on the south. On the west, the subject property is bounded by CSX Railroad right-of-way. Along each of the three street frontages, the minimum required front yard setback is 42 feet, and along the railroad right-of-way, the minimum required setback is 10 feet. The proposed structure would encroach into the 42-foot front yard setback along all three street frontages. Thus, the applicant requests setback variances of 8 feet along West Castle, 27 feet along Hickerson Drive, and 22 feet along Hilliard Drive. Additionally, because a dumpster would lie within the front yard setback along Hilliard Drive, a 37-foot variance from Section 27E5 would be necessary as well. This requires that accessory structures in a commercial district comply with the district's standard setbacks. I've taken some photographs just to show you the existing structure, and I do want to point out that the proposed structure would be completely new. This existing structure would come down and be replaced by this proposed structure. So I have an aerial photograph showing the existing structure. The new one is going to follow the same footprint for the most part. There may be a little bit different with the that brick office part on the front that you can see that looks a little different in that photo. But if you look at that structure now, you see that it's a largely metal structure in somewhat deteriorated shape. I do want to note that the historic bottoms planning study is likely to include a recommendation that structures in this area be located closer than 42 feet to the street. New large-scale industrial development is probably not anticipated in this area in the future. Therefore, broad front setbacks may not be appropriate, especially if the area develops into a more compact and walkable neighborhood. Both the Historic Bottoms Steering Committee and the majority of citizens attending the various public events related to the study have indicated strong support for repurposing the area into an urban neighborhood. We do anticipate getting a draft version of the Historic Bottoms long-range study here within the next few weeks. I just want to provide that to sort of let you know some of the transitions that we expect to be happening in this area, and to point out that the structure being closer to the street is probably more in line with what we anticipate coming out of that study than what our current zoning standards would prescribe, which is that broad 42-foot setback. In the request letter, the applicant contends that having street frontage on 3 sides of the property poses a practical difficulty and constitutes an unusual characteristic. Further, because the property was configured prior to the applicant purchasing it, the situation was not self-created. Staff supports the aesthetic improvements that the project, if approved, would bring to the subject property. Mr. Taylor is here to answer any questions, and I can answer any questions as well. Thank you.
So with that said about the study, the anticipation would be even that there may be a rezoning for that area?
I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with some kind of overlay type design type standards for this area at some point in the future. That we haven't quite made it to that in the study at this point. That the study is going to prescribe a certain look and a certain development pattern, and then it will be up to Planning Commission and City Council to right how to implement it and whether zoning is the appropriate avenue for implementing that.
Okay.
But as you said, the existing, so if they use pretty much the same existing footprint, I mean, all these requests that are being made are based upon the fact that that's the existing footprint in and of itself, correct?
That's right.
And I think we talked about that at Planning Commission.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically the only difference in the footprint is on the existing building. The office goes along almost the entire frontage of the northern road, northern property line. And here we've cut it off. That way we've got good two-way circulation on that north side. Right now, you really can't, we couldn't do that with the old building.
And this is more of a curiosity question. How do you come up with the minimum number of parking places on something like this?
Matt took care of that for us, actually. Okay. So they were able to break the building down into the various components of it. Okay. So there's obviously a retail commercial type component to it. Then there's the recreational type component, and then an office component. And so we utilized a formula that took all of those different uses into account. And he's able to provide, I believe, well over the minimum, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Recreational is in a range of some sort?
It is. It's a shooting range. Then there will also be retail sale of arms there, and then the office space that goes with that.
They'll also do some classes for, I don't know if they're hunter safety, but I do know that they'll have some handgun safety training to get your permit and things like that there.
And there'll be offices just for the retail, or just
for the employees, for whoever's there. There's a couple of offices. Most of that office space is the classroom space.
Okay. Thank you.
And the other thing I do want to point out, and I believe that there are some elevations in here, but right now what's there is this metal structure that's sort of starting to fall apart. The proposed structure is heavily brick. It does have metal on it as well, but it's incorporates a lot more brick into the building material.
And we tried to, even though this is early in the bottom study, some of the things that we heard from the public was that they still wanted an industrial type characteristic on most of the buildings down here. So when we met with staff to begin with, that was portrayed to us. And so I think that the architect's done a good job trying to incorporate a better material but keep an industrial feel with that building.
This has nothing to do with this application, but are they going to keep the other location open, or do you know what?
From what I'm told, they are. This will be an additional location.
Okay.
Anything else for Mr. Taylor?
I've got nothing.
Thank you. All right, this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against, please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Crickets, that's right.
Crickets.
We'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion. Again, we've got 4 pieces here. This application.
Well, I'll move to approve application 1, the 8-foot variance from chart 2, requiring a 42-foot front yard setback.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. There are none. That part's passed. On to number 2.
Go ahead.
Just take care of them.
Yeah.
I move to approve part 2, a 27-foot setback requiring from chart 2, which requires a 42-foot front yard setback.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none.
I move to approve part 3. I cut you off that time.
That's fine. That's fine. You can take over.
A 22-foot variance from chart 2 requiring a 42-foot front yard setback.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That part has been approved.
All right, I move to approve part 4, a 37-foot variance from section 25E5 requiring an accessory structure in a commercial district to comply with a minimum 42-foot front yard setback.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved. Our next item, staff reports and other business.
We have nothing.
Can we confirm?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Confirm when our December meeting is while we're
'cause
sitting here?
Another Monday.
Yeah.
It is. December 19th will be the next meeting, 1 o'clock, December 19th.
All right.
I'm out of pocket then,
I'll be here.
unless something changes. But
Sounds good.
anything else? All right. We will stand adjourned.
All right.
Thank you. Well,